It happened on a night that felt older than time itself. The air was heavy, the kind that presses on your chest until even breathing feels like a confession. I hadn't slept in days. The world outside my window was restless storms without thunder, winds that carried no sound. Something deep inside me knew it was coming. I just didn't know what it was. Not yet. I had been praying, not for answers but for peace. My voice cracked in the stillness, and that's when the room changed. The light flickered once, twice, then dimmed until there was only the faint glow of the candle before me. The air shifted, not colder, not warmer, just different, and in that quiet he appeared again. He didn't speak at first. He only stood there, watching me with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of every soul that ever lived. There was no anger in them, no fire, no fury, only a sorrow so deep it made the walls seem to breathe. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, filled with something ancient. "I will show you what must come," he said. The words struck through me like lightning without light. Before I could speak, the world dissolved around us. The candle, the room, the silence all gone. I was standing in a vast expanse of gray. The horizon stretched into nothing, and then the sky split open. What I saw wasn't a vision, it was a memory of the future. The earth itself trembled, cities burned, their towers breaking apart like brittle glass. The oceans rose in silence, swallowing coastlines as if reclaiming what once belonged to them. There was no sound at first, no screams, no explosions, just the crushing stillness of judgment. And then came the war, not of nations, not of borders. It was something older, the kind of war that begins in the heart before it reaches the hands. I saw men turn against each other, not for power or wealth, but for belief. Families divided, faith twisted, truth buried beneath fear. The sky was red, not with sunset, but with fire, and above it all I saw figures moving through the smoke. Armies marched, carrying flags I didn't recognize, symbols that looked like light but felt like shadow. Machines filled the air, wings of steel blotting out what little sun remained. I saw cities crumble, and the cries of the earth reached higher than any prayer I'd ever heard. And through it all, he stood beside me, silent, his gaze fixed on the chaos. I turned to him and said, "Why are you showing me this?" He looked at me, those eyes filled with both mercy and mourning. "Because they think they are fighting for me," he said softly, "but they do not know me." The scene changed again. I saw the faces of leaders, speaking words wrapped in light, but rooted in darkness. I saw the faithful, some kneeling in hidden rooms, whispering prayers that shook the air, others raising their fists in anger, claiming to defend his name. I saw churches divided, their lights dimmed, their altars cold. The war was not only in the world, it was in the soul of every living thing. Then came the sound, a single note, that seemed to come from the heavens and the earth all at once. It grew until it shook the ground beneath me. Mountains cracked, rivers ran black, the air itself trembled, and in the distance I saw something rise, not an army, not a nation, but a wave of light, fierce and pure. It moved through the darkness like fire through dry grass, unstoppable. Wherever it touched, the shadows screamed and withered, but it did not come from the sky. It came from the people, those who had nothing left but faith. The ones who refused to hate, the ones who still remembered love. I saw them small, trembling, yet unbroken. They didn't fight with weapons. They fought by standing, by enduring, by forgiving when forgiveness made no sense. The light within them grew, and as it did, I realized what he meant. This was not a war to be won by strength. It was a war of hearts, and only those who held the light within would remain standing in the end. The vision deepened. I saw fields of ash where cities once stood. The sky was quiet again, the wind slow and tired, and there in the middle of that ruin a garden began to grow. tiny shoots pushing through the gray earth, fragile yet defiant. And among them I saw people, not many, just a few, walking slowly, helping one another, their faces lit with the faintest glow. They are the ones who will remain, he said, the meek, the merciful, those who refused to forget me when the world turned away. His words echoed, not in my ears, but somewhere deeper, a place beyond language. I wanted to ask who they were, how they survived, why them and not others, but I already knew they were not chosen by power or wealth or title. They were chosen by love. The scene began to fade. The sound of the wind returned, gentle now. I saw the light in his hands flicker, and then he turned to me once more. The war is not yet here, he said, but it has already begun. I could feel the truth of it. Even now, in this world that still pretends to be whole, the cracks are everywhere in our words, our hearts, our faith. He reached out, and for a moment his hand rested over my chest. The warmth was overwhelming, almost unbearable. Do not fear what is coming, he whispered, fear only forgetting. And then, as quickly as it began, it was gone. The gray faded, the air softened. I was back in my room, the candle still burning, its flame trembling as though it had seen what I had. Outside, the storm had stopped. The sky was clear, yet somehow darker than before. I fell to my knees, shaking, my heart still echoing with his words. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, but how do you explain something the world isn't ready to hear? So I wrote. I wrote every detail, every sound, every moment, afraid it might slip away. But no matter how many times I read it, one part never leaves me, the look in his eyes when he spoke of the ones who would remain. There was no triumph there, no pride, only grief and hope. Days turned into weeks, and the world outside went on pretending everything was fine. But I saw it, the unrest beneath the surface, the anger growing, the faith fading. Every headline felt like an echo of what I'd seen. Nations arming themselves, brothers turning against each other, people losing the ability to listen, to love. Sometimes late at night I hear it again, faint, like thunder too far to see, the sound of that war approaching. It's not coming with fanfare or fire. It's coming in silence, in choices, in hearts. He showed me the end, not to scare me, but to remind me the war will not be between us and them. It will be between who we are and what we become. And when the dust settles, it won't be the strong who stand. It will be the faithful, the kind, the ones who carried light through the darkness, even when it cost them everything. And maybe, when that day comes, when the noise finally dies and the fires fade, maybe we'll remember what he said. That the war was never meant to destroy us. It was meant to reveal us. The days after that vision felt different, like the world had slipped into another rhythm that no one else could hear. The sky was the same. The streets were still crowded, but everything had a faint tremor beneath it. People laughed, worked, and planned their tomorrows, but something in the air had changed. It was subtle, hidden under the noise, but once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. A quiet hum, like the earth itself was waiting. I started noticing small things, first the way the light hit the ground at dawn, pale and unfamiliar, as though the sun had grown tired of shining. Birds flew in strange formations, gathering in circles that never broke. Even the air smelled different, heavy with dust and metal. Every night I would wake at the same hour, 3:11, heart racing, as if something had just called my name. And each time, in that silence between sleep and waking, I would remember his words. The war will not be between us and them, but between who we are and what we become. One evening I went walking just to clear my head. The streets were quiet, too quiet for a Friday night. The lamps flickered as I passed, shadows moving like restless ghosts. I ended up near the edge of town where the road met the forest. That's when I saw the first sign. At first, I thought it was fog low, swirling, clinging to the ground. But as I stepped closer, I realized it wasn't fog at all. It was smoke, thin, white, rising from the earth in perfect lines, like the ground itself was exhaling. And beneath it, faint and rhythmic, I could hear something. Not words, not quite a sound, more like a heartbeat, deep and slow, echoing through the soil. I knelt and placed my hand on the ground. It was warm. Not natural warmth, it pulsed, alive, as though something vast was stirring beneath my fingers. And then a voice, faint, distant, carried on the wind. I knew it wasn't human. They are moving. It whispered. I froze. The words weren't heard through my ears, but inside me. I looked around, expecting to see someone, anyone, but there was nothing. Only the whisper of the trees and that faint hum that seemed to rise from everywhere at once. That night I dreamt of the same gray horizon from before, but this time I wasn't alone. There were others standing beside me, men, women, children, all looking at the sky. It was split open, the stars swirling in spirals of red and gold. From the heavens, two lights descended, one brilliant white, the other a burning crimson. They fell slowly, circling each other like predators, until they touched the ground. The earth shook, and then the war began. Not with armies or bombs. It began with silence, a silence so deep it devoured sound. People screamed, but no noise came. Cities vanished beneath shadows that weren't cast by anything visible. The white light spread across the sky like wings, while the red light crawled across the earth like veins of fire. And between them humanity stood, trembling, caught between two forces that didn't belong to this world. When I woke, my window was open, though I was sure I had closed it. The night outside was still, but in the distance I saw faint red glows on the horizon, silent, pulsing, like embers under the skin of the world. The next day it was on the news. They said strange lights had been seen over dozens of cities, red streaks moving through the sky, sometimes low enough to cast shadows. People claimed to hear whispers in their sleep, to see figures standing at the edge of their vision. The world brushed it off as atmospheric phenomena, but I knew better. The war had begun. Quietly, invisibly, people started to change. It wasn't sudden, it was slow, creeping. Small acts at first, kindness fading. Empathy replaced by irritation, then anger. Conversations became battles, truth became a weapon. It was as if something had slipped into humanity's bloodstream, something unseen, but strong enough to turn neighbor against neighbor. One night I heard shouting from across the street. Two brothers, I think. I'd seen them before, always together, always laughing. But now their voices were filled with venom. They screamed words that didn't sound like their own, words that cut deeper than any blade. I saw one of them raise a hand, trembling with rage. The other didn't move. And in that frozen second, I saw it, a shadow, faint but unmistakable, moving beneath their feet. It wasn't cast by light. It was alive. When I blinked, it was gone. The brothers stopped shouting. One turned, walked away without a word. The other stood there, crying quietly into his hands. The world was unraveling. In the days that followed, I wrote down everything I saw. The strange silences, the unnatural tempers, the lights in the sky that seemed to watch instead of shine. I noticed the same number appearing everywhere, 311 on clocks, receipts, even in headlines. I remembered the hour I kept waking. It wasn't coincidence, it was a warning. Then he came again. It wasn't in a dream this time. I was awake, sitting in the dark, staring at the dying candle. The flame bent sideways, though there was no wind. And then he was there, standing in the corner of the room, quiet, radiant, sorrowful. The separation has begun, he said. I asked him what that meant, though deep down I already knew. Every soul must choose. he said. Not with words, not with banners, but with their hearts. I could feel the truth of it pressing down on me, heavy as stone. The war is not fought with armies, he continued. It moves through thought, through desire, through what men choose to love. His eyes darkened then, not with anger, but grief. Many have already fallen. They do not see the chains, but they wear them. I asked if there was hope, if anything could stop what was coming. For the first time he looked away. The end cannot be stopped, he said, but it can be endured. He reached out, touched the air before me. It shimmered like heat. When the last light fades, he whispered, "Those who remember me will not be taken by the fire." Then he was gone. No flash, no sound, only the smell of rain and the faint warmth where he had stood. The next morning, the red lights in the sky were gone. In their place, strange clouds hung low, gray, heavy, unmoving. People said it felt like the sun had forgotten how to rise. But what scared me most wasn't the darkness outside. It was what I began to see in people's eyes, a dullness, like something inside them had gone quiet. It spread quickly. You could see it everywhere, in faces on the street, on screens, in the news anchors who spoke with perfect calm while describing chaos. The war wasn't on the ground anymore. It was inside the human soul. And yet not everyone was lost. Every so often I'd meet someone, a stranger, a passer-by whose eyes still carried light, faint but alive. They were kind in ways that felt defiant. They helped without asking why. And somehow, when I was near them, the air felt lighter. I began to realize these were the ones he had shown me, the ones who would remain, but they were few, so few. One night, I found myself walking through the city square. The lights were dim, the power inconsistent. I could hear distant shouting, breaking glass, but in the center of the square a small group had gathered, holding candles that refused to die, no matter how the wind howled. They sang softly, not in any language I recognized, but the melody wrapped around me like a memory. As I drew closer, one of them turned toward me, a young woman. Her eyes shimmered faintly, like reflections of stars. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that didn't belong in this world anymore. She handed me a candle. "Keep it burning," she said. "It listens." I didn't ask what she meant. Somehow, I already understood. The world grew darker after that. Cities turned on each other, nations fractured. Technology failed, not all at once, but piece by piece, as if the wires themselves were refusing to serve a world that no longer knew truth. The sky flickered with strange lights, shapes moving just beyond sight, and yet through all of it the candles burned, not many, just enough. You could find them in windows, on rooftops, by the hands of strangers who had never met but somehow knew they were the same. One by one, I began to write their names, the ones who still remembered, the ones who still loved. I wrote them in a book, not because I thought it would save them, but because something told me they needed to be remembered. Then came the day the light died completely. No sunrise, no stars. The world fell into a darkness so pure it swallowed sound. For a moment I thought it was the end, the war finished, the earth undone. But in that blackness something stirred, a glow, faint and gold, rising from the ground instead of the sky. It came from the candles, all of them, burning brighter than ever before. I saw their flames lift, carried upward by something unseen, joining together into one vast light that pierced the heavens, and within that light I saw him again, not in sorrow this time, but in peace. The world shook once, and the darkness shattered. When it was over, I found myself standing in silence. The streets were empty, the air still. The war, whatever it truly was, had passed. The world would rebuild, but not the same. The ones who remained carried something in their eyes, not triumph, not pride, but understanding. I remember what he told me, that this war would reveal who we truly are, and now I know he was right. Because in the end, it wasn't power that survived. It wasn't those who fought hardest or shouted loudest. It was those who kept their light burning when the world demanded darkness. And as I write this now, I still keep that candle. Its flame is small, fragile, barely a whisper of light, but it burns, always, and in the quiet moments before dawn, when the world feels still and hollow, I swear I can hear it, a faint heartbeat beneath the earth, not of war, but of something beginning again.